read through this. Perhaps there is merit to the opinion held by some assigners and supervisors who believe all officials think that they are better than they really are. And the example it gives is 2 of 3 officials selected to work the NCAA championship game. You know, they're disappointed because they're not the R, you know, and they're U1 and U2. So that there's some merit in that for sure. So as we go through this slide, just a few bullet points that, you know, might help you along the way and kind of fill in some blanks as the things that myself and Jason and Eddie Phillips look for. So as we get started, let's talk about the rule of the day. As officials, I feel it's important that we set a goal that we have knowledge of the rules. It's our job to administer the game in a fair and equitable way. And we also administer the game for safety reasons as well. So my ask of all officials is that as we have time, we're in the rules book, we're in our mechanics manuals, we're in our case books. I'm not working this year varsity basketball. I didn't work last year as well during COVID. And as I watched games on the MHSAA TV network, obviously I saw a lot of great things, but there's things that we all need to improve on as well. And when I do watch games and observe, it's not a, haha, gotcha. You know, when I go back and I talk to other officials who've worked, what it is, it's to get better, for all of us to get better. So know that I'll be watching games all winter long. If you want me to come out and watch one of your games, I'm more than happy to do that as well. And it's to improve. It's to make our program the premier program in the state of Michigan. And it takes an army. And all your hard work is appreciated by myself, Jason, Eddie, and our executive board and our board of directors. Trust me. We're at 230 officials. 2 years ago, we're down to 180. That's 50 officials who we haven't brought back into the game. So we're in a spot where we're going to use you a lot. So I think it's important as we get out here on the court that we obviously our rules knowledge is where it needs to be. And one thing as well that I like to point out is we talk a lot about this. I see a lot of things where certain rules look like they're being over or not adhered to. When we walk on the court, we can't pick and choose what rules we're going to, enforce every night. We need to enforce them 100%. All right. Regardless if a coach says, well, this has never happened before. Well, you weren't there the night before. You weren't there the week before. Do your due diligence, get in the rules book, know the rules. The next one concerns fitness. And obviously my only point here with fitness is these kids are 16, 17, 18 years old. Obviously they're in great shape. They're playing this sport year round now, especially with AAU opportunities, camp opportunities. So I feel that as officials, it's our best option is to try to stay up, these officials physically. If you take a look, and BJ and Jason can expand on this as well. I mean, if we watch the NCAA game, they look like BJ Weaver and Jason Wildey for a reason. And they can expand on this when they, have a few things to share as well about probably how important that is for them to get to the next level as well. So my ask of you is, for physical conditioning and appearance, do your due diligence. And when I say by appearance is let's make sure, for me, let's make sure your pants are hemmed correctly. Let's make sure your shirt is tucked in all the time. Let's make sure that it fits properly, that it looks crisp, that it looks nice, because when you walk in the gym before the game starts, first impressions are everything. And I think it's important that we set that tone right away. Clean, crisp uniform. Moving on to the next thing, humble swagger. You bring a demeanor into every game that conveys to coaches and players that you're calm and confident, but not cocky, and you're not confrontational. And does anyone mistake your kindness for weakness? So my big thing is game management. That's huge, right? We get in the middle of January and February. We're a little tired. We've had a long day at work. We're working our 36th game of the season. And something that might have set you or didn't set you off on December 1st might set you off on February 1st. So my ask of you is please, please, please have a approachable attitude. Have a open communication line with these coaches until you can't anymore. Coaches will tee themselves up. You don't need to go looking for it, okay? But I just my ask of you, I know it's tough. It's tough for me when I get on a court, something just wrong time. They say that, wrong place, wrong time, and you just gotta be a buck, right? We're there to manage the game from here to here and keep it here. So again, a lot of that starts with your demeanor, how you approach your coaches, how you talk to them. And this next one is one that's very important, really important to me. There are two lists that we have as signers, and I'll admit it. There's a list in my head. If there's a game open, and I'll be honest with you, this list is who makes my life easier and harder when it comes to what we do in our program. Who's following the program? Who's keeping their arbiter up to date? Who's a good crewmate when they get onto the court? Who has rules knowledge? Who's keeping in shape? All these things factor in when I need to make assignments, because we owe it to these kids, these student athletes, to have the best experience they can possible. So I look at it this way. I have a low maintenance list and I have a pain in the ass list, and that's okay. I mean, I need the pain in the ass list people too. But when I have these discussions with you one-off, be prepared for some constructive criticism. Okay, how I feel that you could make this program better. I'm not being a jerk about it. I'm just being factual that constructive criticism has to be something you're open to when it comes to why you think your schedule should be better and why maybe it's not. So there are two lists. Jason, do you have anything to add about us having two lists?
No, something that gets you on that second list is not accepting games at a time and manner. Because that's especially like when you get to the last minute things, you don't, somebody who doesn't check their thing and pick up a game, I'm not gonna even try to call them for a game tomorrow because they don't respond for a game for next week. So that makes a big difference too, for that.
Availability is huge. And what I mean by that is I email it way too much. I know I do, but 95% of the group is very good with their availability. And if you have a game, you have to give it back. I don't care. I got to fill it, right? Things happen. I understand that more than anybody in this room. Trust me. You got to give a game back. You got to give it back. I don't need an explanation. I got to get it filled. But before that, when it comes to availability, the arbiter is an easy tool to use. And if you would please, as your schedule changes, update your arbiter. I mean, you can break it down to like periods of time during a day that you cannot work, a whole day, et cetera, et cetera. So to Jason's point, if you see a game and it comes through as well, and it shows, I can see that you're notified. And if it just sits there, it kind of eats at us, because are you going to accept it or you're not? Because if it's notified, it tells me you probably haven't kept your arbiter up to date, right? Because if you have, you'd accept it right away. So I can see when you look at a game, and so can Jason and Ed, and haven't accepted it. I can tell you right now, and I know this is probably apples to oranges, but Jason Wildey and BJ Weaver, when they get games, boy, they don't sit out there notified, because guess what? Bill Eck or Rob Doss is going on to the next official, whoever these two gentlemen work for. So I'd kind of like you to get in the mindset that, please, if you could accept these games in a timely manner and keep your arbiter up to date, it'd be greatly appreciated and make our life easier. Who are you? Are you a great partner? That's the biggest thing for me tonight that I want you to take away from this meeting, is a great partner. There's 3 teams every night. A team, team A, team B, we're team C. And I might not hang out with you and drink beer. You might not be a personal friend, but when we get on that court, we have one goal. And I want to make sure we're all on that same page. And it starts by the second you get there with a thorough pregame, and we walk the walk and talk the talk that first half, and anything we need to talk about in the second half, we do at halftime. And then we have a post game. So you might not be best buddies. Jason Wild and I might not hang out, but when we get on the court, I can tell you one thing, Jason and I are going to be on the same page. It's going to happen. So my ask again of you is to please have a high standard for yourself and your partners, and let's protect our partners too. How many times have we got in front of a coach, and Jim Clark's in front of a coach, and he's complaining about Tom Beamlander across the way. Tom's doing this, Tom's doing that. Shut that down. Shut that down. If that festers, it's going to be a fire. That's where there's smoke, there's fire in this case. So being a good crewmate also is within a game with game management. That example I gave you. So never throw your partner underneath the bus. If you throw your partner underneath the bus and I find out about it and it's true, we're gonna have a difficult conversation because that can't happen. That can't happen at all. Also underneath this section, a quick trigger to a lower level game that might not normally work. And there's a lot of high level officials in this room who work a lot of lower level games for us. And it's a big ask to be away from your family and your friends. And they work with younger officials. They fill in at the last minute and they don't big time the game just because it's at a level they're not normally working. And I appreciate that very much. So when we do get a lower level game, let's make sure that we're working just as hard as if we're doing the Swan Valley Freeland boys game, or if we're doing an Arthur Hill Saginaw High boys game, whatever it may be. So let's keep that in mind as well. Share the gift. This is a big one for me. A lot of veteran officials in this room. As I look around 20, 25 years, a lot of us like myself are on the back end of a career. I'm stepping away from varsity basketball because I feel I can maybe have a little more benefits to the younger officials, working with them and helping them, and also getting out and about with seeing games and seeing all of your work. So again, you can make this game better too by sharing what you've learned with the younger people, letting people know maybe who aren't even in the game. Say, hey, think about signing up, be a mentor to somebody. I know Tom's putting a mentorship program together for our younger officials to pair up with veteran officials. So if you're interested in something like that, get with Tom, because like I said, 230 to 180, where are we going to, in 2 years, where are we going to be in 2 more years? And behind the scenes, we're working hard to recruit and retain. And seems like we spin our wheels just from the standpoint of, Bruce said it earlier, sportsmanship is holding back a lot of these younger officials or younger people from, or prospective younger officials from getting into the game. That's what I hear all the time. No one wants to get yelled at. No one wants to get screamed at. So please share your gift. So these are just a few things that I look for when it comes to our group. Great communicators on and off the court, great crewmates, keep your arbor up to date, exceptional rule knowledge, know your mechanics, get in your casebook. A lot of resources that we have up on our website and also at mhsaa.com, because if you come to me and say you don't have any resources, well, you're not looking real hard. In this day and age, they're right in front of us. And we have all the tools to be successful. So as we move forward into this year, I hope we have our best and successful year ever. And I know we will. It's going to be trials and tribulations, and there already has been, but that's what, we'll take care of those. But know that you have our 100% support. 100% support. We have a great thing going to TCAOA. We have great relationships with athletic directors and schools. So know that we have your back as a group, and go out, work hard, and have fun, and go have a couple beers when you're done if you want with your crewmates. So Jason, you want to add anything?
No, I noticed that there was, not so much, I think everybody in here has done it, but a lot of the newer officials maybe watching on the cast don't have pictures on, and especially with newer officials, I'll pick on Garbulinski's. Which one's Josh? Which one's, easy to get mixed up with people, especially with
the same to me.
Especially with newer people, and that's something that we reference back a lot. Okay, who did I see at the meeting? Was that Fred or was that Tom? Which one was that? Okay, now I remember. So that's something that's definitely beneficial for us to do also.
Yeah, I'll send out an email on that too to remind, because that's, I will tell you this. I work a little college softball here and there. If you don't have a picture of, you don't get games. So, I'm not going to say that's how it's going to go here, but just helps the program, right? If I'm working with Kim for the first time and she doesn't know me, or I don't, vice versa, guess what? A picture helps, right? When we walk in a gym, just little things like that. So I appreciate that. Yes, sir. Bruce.
What your expectation is for crew confirmation.
Yes. Yeah, I will do that. And I'll send out another.
Sign in one last time, Heidi.
Yeah. All through the doors, and then it's on the flap, I think.
That's the precedent. Yeah. Go.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tom. Yes, real simple. And I'll again put this on the arbiter. If you're listed first in a 2-man or 3-man game, 2-person or 3-person game, excuse me, please, you are the sole contact. So if it's a TCAOA game or a Saginaw Valley League game that also is underneath my umbrella, if you are the R, all contact flows from you. From partner contact to school contact, and then flowing back to partner contact to make sure that, you know, everything's hunky-dory. I've reached out to the school, blah,
Who do
blah,
you
blah.
want to contact, Scott? As an R, you want to contact?
Your partners and the schools.
Nothing to do with you guys, not the assignments.
No, I do not want, no. We're all adults. I trust that we're doing our due diligence when it comes to communicating. We can't communicate too much either. So I know other assigners will tell you different ways to communicate, but to me, U2 does not need to reach out to ours. If you're listed first, you are in charge. And I also, when it becomes anything that happens during that game, that means that I'd like to hear from you as well. So, thank you, Bruce. And I'll put that, several reminders will be coming out before the season starts on Monday, November 29th, officially for high school girls basketball. I know a lot of us are working games already. So, any other questions? Yes, sir, CB.
Question for mechanics. This year, are we going to be across from the table during the national anthems, or are we going to be by the table as an association? Last year, we were across the table. Are we going to stick with that?
So like a COVID,
I prefer to be across the table. None of this fist bump and stuff, but what are we doing as an association?
I feel that is something that as a crew you can talk about before your game. I don't think there's an official position we're going to take as a association. Whatever you feel comfortable doing. You know what I mean? So I don't want to put you in a position where you're not going to feel comfortable doing something. You want to get away from the table, go to your spot. I got no problem with that. But make sure your partners know that before they stand there for the national anthem in front of the table and you take off across the court. You know what I mean? Let's try to be in unison right from the get-go, and that includes that. I don't.
Because even in today's game, they wouldn't have a chance. They wouldn't be swayed.
Yeah.
I mean, the
Go.
schools aren't.
No.
They do nothing.
Do what just stay away. No reason, come over or, go back, I should say. Yeah, good question, but not gonna press anybody in a situation where they don't, in this case, gotta stay table side for the anthem. So, anybody else? Got lots of time, lots of questions. You want to ask them?
Jason, anything else to add from an assigner's perspective?
I'll add this, I'll go backwards. All games are not out. So if you're looking at your schedule and there's some gaps, they'll be filled. We have, right now, I think, looking this today as I was on the computer assigning games, we're upwards of 1,700 games in our association, almost 4,000 slots to assign. And we still have 25-30% games on the back end of the year to assign. So if you see gaps, you won't see them for long. And I can only speak for our association when it comes to game assignments. If you work in the Saginaw Valley League, those games have been doled out 100%. Barring any changes, they're set in stone. Jason, I'm sorry.
What do you expect post game if you have an altercation or if you have anything go on during the game? What are your expectations?
From a standpoint of communication with me?
Yeah, back to these.
Yeah, anything that you feel like it could get back to me. I don't want any surprises. So any player, again, this will be in an email, any player and coaches technicals, any administrative technical fouls, any unsporting behavior from coaches, anybody at the table, fans, I need to know about it. Because we need to, like Bruce, we're nipping it in the butt right now. Because I'm telling you what, I could sit here and tell you 2 stories that if I sat here a week ago, I never thought I'd hear my whole life as an official, and they've happened. And it's going to continue to happen. So unfortunately, potentially. So please flow that to me and I'll get back to you as I need information. I've had Tom send out some information, get real familiar on what the MHSAA expects from a reporting standpoint when you do reports, how to fill them out, what kind of detail they want. And, get familiar with all that because I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if it does, everything's electronically now. So, but I don't want any surprises. So that's a good question. I need to know because I can't be putting officials in situations where they don't feel safe or they're getting walked out by security. Not going to happen. Not happening. Not on my watch, at least.
Scott, what about, what if we look at an arbiter, the game's been assigned by Jason? What would your preference be? Would you rather us if Jason's the assigner on the game, go to Jason or go to Scott, or doesn't it matter?
Yeah, that, I know that confuses people too, because you see Eddie gives out games, or Jason or myself. All decorum issues come through me as the coordinator of officials. We'll make it real simple. And Jason, if they hear of anything, if Jason or Eddie hears of anything, they'll float back to me. A lot of moving parts, so I can see how you get a hold of Jason, but Jason and Ed have, my number, and they'll get a hold of me, but it has to come to me. And then I'll take it up from there. Anything else? Oh, hey, Rob.
The pregame speech for the coaches, has anybody come up with something? Obviously, the point of emphasis this year is to control the crowd, spectators, the bench. Has anybody come up with something that they can share with us that's working or will work? Or
Craig, I'll answer. I'll tell you what I expect, but Craig, like today you did a game, correct? Got coaches together.
Didn't get that, they were like.
Bad example.
what would you have said they got?
You've worked.
And the game we had was one of the problem child schools, but I'm not bringing it up.
Yeah, that's fine.
And we're talking about sportsmanship, players, coaches, fans, and everybody. And
Short but simple, Rob. Sportsmanship, sportsmanship, sportsmanship. I always feel when we get these meetings together, if we keep them around too long, they're not listening to us anyways. I think they're in game mode, whether it's players or coaches. Simple and sweet, sportsmanship.
They've all had their coaches meet. You realize the spectators will not be a part of this.
Yeah, listen, it's all sportsmanship this year. No one's, you know what I mean? It starts right here. And that's here too. So that's my ask too. Yes.
Well, I mean, I can tell you that in my pregame, I've been saying to the coaches, the sportsmanship and the tone of sportsmanship for this entire contest starts with them.
Yeah.
And that is my language. It starts with you. Your behavior sets the tone. Please exhibit good sportsmanship. And the other thing I add is if we're going to have a conversation, let's have it at this decibel level.
Yeah.
And not as a crew, we're more than happy over talk, right? Let's keep it at this level. And I think you sort of set that expectation, because then if something happens and I've done it, I've gone to the coach, I'm like, remember what we talked about in pregame about sportsmanship? It's not happening.
Yeah.
Right? Try to bring it down. So you got to plant the seed during the pregame with them, and then if we get that, remind them our pregame agreement. Sportsmanship.
There's been a gap there too, to Bruce's point, I think, with coaches' response. I mean, they need to realize that's huge. That's their responsibility. I know, Kevin, when you coach Midland, Midland High, if Kevin's running the, 14 feet back then for the coach's box and doing this and that, I'm pretty sure some of his parents might pick up on that behavior. And Kevin wasn't like that, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But Kevin's there coaching his kids, coaching them hard, asking questions to the officials. 9 times out of 10, you're going to have fans, I think, who are they're going to cheer on the team at this point, right? So such responsibility for these coaches. And to Bruce's point, set the standard high now. And then if they have a friendly reminder during the game, then we'll do that. Continue to do that. So. Yes, sir.
If we do have injuries or something comes up that you can't do a game, make sure you call any of us, at least so we can make sure we get the games rescheduled as quickly as we can. An email, I emailed Monday, I see I'm still on the game Wednesday. Well, that's probably not the best situation. Try to, hey, Wednesday, I pulled my hamstring. I don't think I'm gonna go. Even I don't know. I'm gonna see how tomorrow goes, but anything you can give us so we can be prepared, that have someone on deck to fill that. Because when you get it on Wednesday at 10 o'clock saying, oh, by the way, I'm not working tonight. Okay, I don't know who was supposed to get it, where it was sent, but obviously they didn't see it or something that happened. So call any of us and we'll figure out, even if it's Scott assigned it, call me. If you can't get in touch with Scott, call Ed. If you can't get in touch with either of us, whatever you got to do to make sure we know, that's be appreciated too.
I mean, and listen, we took this on. We love what we do. I'll give you an example today. Listen, I talked to Jason. I was on the phone, Jason, probably 12 times today. Season hasn't started yet, but that's just what we do, and we enjoy doing it. But I mean, it's all encompassing, and John Cridio does it as well now. And there's other people in the room who've assigned, and any help you can give us. If you pulled a hammy on Monday and you can't go Wednesday, a Wednesday afternoon phone call, probably should have came well before Wednesday afternoon. So just anything you can do to support and help us, we appreciate, because I tell you, we appreciate everything that everyone does in this room. Again, open communication. If you ever need to talk to us one-off, always available. So anything else before we?
Scott,
Yes, I'm
who
sorry.
is that?
Eddie Phillipson is out of Midland. Eddie Phillipson.
At any of the meetings, I don't.
Eddie is
Right, so I don't know.
Eddie's not, Eddie's not,
I keep hearing you say
Go on the website and see his pictures.
yeah.
that.
Any pictures on it.
All right.
Ed Phillipson is one of the assigners on my staff out of Midland. Ed handles a lot of assignments for Jack Pine to that, that direction and so forth. So yeah, Eddie's been out of town a lot lately for work, so he's not been able to attend meetings, but Ed Phillipson is also on staff with Jason and myself. So great question. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I shouldn't assume that everyone knows who Eddie is. So no. Yeah. Yes, sir, Mr. Zaluka.
What's our association's standpoint on Brett's email about forming a district crew for playoffs?
Be determined.
Okay.
We haven't, that's a great question. Yeah. Has everyone saw that email about, interesting how they're going about it for districts and forming a crew, but
Baseball.
I mean, I would think as an association, we want to do it, either we do it or we don't. I mean, I don't. that's
well,
my-
it almost makes it look like they, leave it up to individual official. That's the way I read the email. So if you want Mark Jarlock on your crew, which,
Oh.
it's not good. Or, yeah, everyone just wrote. Can of worms.
I did.
To be determined, Jeff.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was interesting too. All right, there's no more questions. If there's questions after, or,
I'll be here, so.
yeah, I gotta
I
leave
don't
here
know
in a
all
few.
the answers, but.
But no, this Jason and BJ, it's fantastic they're here, and I'm glad, Tom, you put this together to have these two gentlemen here. I'm gonna let them just talk about, their careers, where they're at, how they got there, and then any questions and answers, Q&A for them as well. So go ahead. BJ.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'll give you just a little background, I guess, for those that don't know me. I think this is year 13 working high school basketball. I worked middle school basketball while I was still playing at Bay City All Saints. This is going to be year 10 working men's college basketball, starting at JUCO. Currently work for Mike Conlon in the Michigan Junior College League, for Bill Eck in the MIAA, which is the oldest collegiate league in the country. Your Alma, Albion, all of that. That's that league. The WAC is an NAIA league. That's assigned by Bill Eck. And I currently work in the GLIAC. Been fortunate the last 4 years to start working in the GLIAC Division II level, working conference games, which is not, you work yourself up from non-conference to conference games. I had making my multiple trips across the bridge this year. Loving every minute of it. I have a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old at home, and a not so happy wife between November and March. So very blessed that she lets me do this. I can ask, I don't know what you guys want to slot with these or talk about some other stuff. I'll let Mason do an introduction. You guys can start up some questions or something.
Jason Wildey, started as a senior in high school, so the legacy program. Many of you know my father is a signer, Dennis, so that's how I got into it. Started with what's that? Yeah. Old man Wildey, big Wildey. I remember when I first started, I hated it with passion. Just like you're going out there and you're kind of just wrapped behind everything, and you go out there and you start getting yelled at. Like, this wasn't a great experience, but every game that you do just kind of gets better. So you have to understand, like, this, you start off, everybody has to start off somewhere. Everybody's gonna start off as a rookie. And there's gonna be some growing pains, but hopefully you have good people around you, signers, officials, whoever the case may be, mentors, and you just kind of stick with it. And I promise you, every day, every game will just get a little bit better, a little bit easier. So I started, like I said, when I was a senior, so I think I'm on year 21, maybe 21. Been doing college for about 12 years now. Started at JUCO level, like BJ, JUCO, Division III. JUCO is also Mike Conlon, so he has the men's and the women's. The women's side, we have Rob Doss, now Bill Eck, who pretty much has the same conferences though, right? So like the MIAA, like he was mentioning, Helmka, all of that, Kalamazoo, Hope, Calvin, and the WAC, University of Michigan Dearborn, Concordia, Cornerstone, Aquinas, yeah, so, and then Division II, the GLIAC, Saginaw Valley, Northwood, Wayne State, and then I've been fortunate to have the opportunity to move up to the Division I level. This is my fourth or fifth in the MAC, in the Horizon, and that's Patty Broderick. So definitely been very blessed at, very thankful for the opportunities that I've been definitely been given. So just like BJ, you know, there's a lot of traveling at times, and I got a 20-month at home, so sometimes it's tough to leave the kiddies. But it's something that if you have a passion for, it's an enjoyable thing. And yeah, there are some travels, but it's a wonderful experience. You get to work with a lot of great officials, whether from a high school or from a college rank. You just get to work with a lot of good guys that you don't really get the opportunity to work with a lot. And let's be honest, obviously, as you move up, it gets better. You know, we all been in high school, and I'll be honest, I get yelled more in a high school game than I do in any college game. Hands down. Hands down. I'll get yelled at more in a Freeland Swan Valley boys or girls varsity game than if I did Saginaw Valley, Grand Valley girls basketball or Division I game. It's just crazy like that. So just take that with a grain of salt in the sense of, as if that is an ambition of yours, I promise you the next level, fans get better because they're more knowledgeable. Coaches get better because they're more knowledgeable. Players get better because they're more knowledgeable. I think at the high school level, you just get fans, players, coaches that, you know, see it the way they want to see it and don't understand what a good officiating game looks like. They just view it from their one angle. So just take that with a grain of salt. But like I said, I'm along with BJ, just very thankful for the opportunities that I've been given. You just kind of start out somewhere, and whatever your ambition is, whether it's, you know, middle school, high school, JV, varsity, if you got ambitions farther than that, whatever it is, just do you. Just control the things that you can control. And if it's something that you have ambitions for, then ask somebody. Ask BJ, ask myself. Scott's obviously on the softball ranks, but he might have, you know, some connections as well. If you have questions about those things, just ask.
So, you know, one of the reasons that I invited BJ and Jason to come, which I'm very glad that they did, is that there's a natural progression, right? As they both identified, they started out in junior high, they worked their way up through high school. I think Scott would put them on literally any high school game in this area without concern. Obviously, they've moved themselves up to the college level. Brett, maybe. Okay. One of the things that I know, because I've gone to camp with both of them, is the importance of camp, right? Not only camp when you're starting out, but camp when you're looking at moving up to, if you do have aspirations for the college level, the importance of camp. So can the two of you kind of talk about your experiences at like a high school level camp and your experiences at a college level camp, as far as what expectations from camp clinicians and signers who are in attendance, what their expectations are and what they're looking for?
I started at Spike's camp, so I don't know if that's where you started too. So I remember, and I was thankful of my father in the sense of, like, when I first started, don't learn bad habits. So I went to Jim Eastman's camp. So he's not, I mean, he's kind of in the area, but he doesn't really officiate basketball anymore. This was around Florida for the winter time. But you start you're kind of a clean slate, and you just try to learn good habits along the way. So you don't want to learn bad habits. So I went to his camp my first, 3-4 years, just trying to get a good understanding. And a lot of it was just mechanics, positioning kind of stuff. It was still kind of officiating, but it was kind of like, if you look the part, sometimes that's half the battle. If you look good and you're in good position, you have good mechanics, that's usually half the battle. You kind of have crappy mechanics. Coaches start to like, are you really confident in that call? Just mechanics sometimes goes a long ways. So you start at Spike's camp, and then you kind of realize this is kind of maxed out at that camp. So then you realize, okay, what's the next level camp? So then I went to like John Kirk, who used to have the Saginaw Valley League, who was also the signer for the GLIAC at the time. So then it was just like, okay, who's the next person? So then you kind of go there, and then you're like, okay. So then you start getting the high school games, and you're like, okay, what's the next step? And it was like Mike's camp, because then you have the JUCO. So it's kind of like you were saying, it's kind of like what progression you're doing. And there are camps, like when you feel like you've maxed out at one camp, not to say that you can't take good things out of every camp.
And you're talking about Mike Conlon, correct?
Right.
Jay, yeah,
So-
yeah.
So then you just kind of like, okay, what's the next camp that I feel like could be extremely beneficial? And you can go to these camps, and it might not be something where your ambition of college games, you just want to get better as a high school official. So just go to a camp. And if you don't like the games you're doing, do something about it. Don't just piss and moan and piss in the wind. Clearly, if you want better games, then do something. Go to a camp, try to get better. And I promise you, as you go to camps, you will become a better official. And I would probably go on a limb and say your games will improve, and the quality of games will improve as well.
I'll take a little different spin at camps. So I still attend camps, he still attends camps. Camps, whether you're first year, 5th year, 10, 20 years, no matter what, camps are vitally important. Monday night, the two Toms were talking about keeping up with the game. The game is ever changing. I had a boss, I spoke about this to a group of people at my work the other day. My boss back in the day said, specifically about my ambulance company, if you don't keep up with technology, the business is basically going to outrun you. No different in basketball. If you don't keep up with the ever-changing game of basketball, the game is going to run right by you. It's going to leave you in the dust. And it's going to leave you in the dust, and maybe in the sense of middle school game versus the varsity game, maybe. So to be involved in the game and be kind of keeping up with the game, camps are going to do that. That's good. The mechanics change every year. The play calling changes, the pace of the game, the type, the ball screens now weren't around back in the day. The low post game is almost gone. All that stuff you're going to get at camp, and you're going to get by working more games. So that's kind of a different spin on camps, if that's okay, Tom. I mean,
Yeah. No, I mean, the one thing, like I said, I've been to camps with both BJ and Jason. I think one of the things that you have to be engaged at camp, right? So, BJ and I might not be actively officiating a game at camp, but anytime the clinician pulls that group of officials together, whoever was officiating that game, we were right there listening to the feedback that was being given, right? And I know it's tough because you maybe just got done officiating a game and you want to take a break, give your mind a breather. But showing that active engagement, I mean, would you two agree, showing that active engagement when you personally are not actively engaged, but showing that you care about what's being taught and what the feedback that's being given?
I don't know how much a high school camp runs, maybe a couple $100 nowadays, I've paid $500 plus to attend a camp. That's not including hotels and fuel. Yeah, you're not getting anything. You're not getting games out of it. You get just as much out as you're going to put in. You're going to go there, work your 20-minute AAU game, whatever it is, take your shoes off and go sit. That's what you're going to get out of it. Now, if you're going to listen in on every conversation and listen to every clinician, I mean, you got to take stuff with a grain of salt because, camps sometimes don't, Tom's gonna be speaking one language and I might be speaking another language, which isn't good for the camp, but that can happen. But you get out just as much as you put in to a camp or officiating in general, really.
The one thing that I'll say is if you do decide to go to camp, just don't be a yabba person. If somebody's trying to give you some type of feedback, good or bad, don't be a yabba person. You might disagree with them, just take it and try to take bits and pieces from it. Most of it's good stuff, but there are times where maybe you just disagree, but I wouldn't vocalize that. You don't want to be labeled that guy. You don't want to be labeled the yeah, but guy. You did this, yeah, but that. You did that, yeah, but, you're always kind of being counterproductive then. If somebody has some feedback for you, just take it. Take it and try to dissect what you can out of that statement or that feedback and try to make the next half, game, quarter, whatever, just try to improve on what obviously just happened.
Here's a good story about camps. First time I ever attended Mike Conlon's camp, went out and refereed my butt off. I worked in front of John Adams, who was the Division I men's coordinator at the time. I had awesome feedback, and I'm probably 19 at the time, or 19 or 20. Had an awesome camp, and I'm getting hired by Conlon. The very next weekend, I go to Bill X camp, and I couldn't put my shirt on the right way that camp. I couldn't referee anything. I was so intimidated. Out of the campers at that camp, I'm going to say probably now 15 of them are Division I officials. And I was 20 at the time, running around with all these guys, Edwin Young, Courtney Green, guys you see on the Big Ten every night were at this camp with me. I had no business being there. No business. And that can happen, right? I mean, you can go, if someone walked in the gym or this room right now, there's certain middle school basketball, they're going to go to, I think Dustin, the only one that has a camp around here anymore. Brian Morley, maybe. Yeah. Even if those guys go to a varsity camp right now, they could look just like that. This lone wolf out there not knowing what they're doing. So don't ever be discouraged about that. Suck it up and go back next year. It took me 4 years to get hired by Bill X. It's one of those things. That's just I like that story.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. No questions. I think we're at. Go ahead, Bruce. Yeah.
So I think for both of you guys, you're working at a level, but there's obviously officials that have been in those leagues longer, aspiring to be, and I think oftentimes the signers where whether you're working a higher level with Jack Pine, or you're working way into the Tri-Valley Conference in this area, then you're working the more competitive matchups within the Tri-Valley Conference, or now you get the Scott staff and working some like you guys have said, higher level basketball, and you get partnered with two very veteran officials, and you're kind of newer guy. You know what I mean? What are the experience that you would look for from those two veterans in terms of how the game is managed?
I tell you, it's hard not to be intimidated, right? So I worked a game with Randy Hutton and Frank Marr at Western. They were playing Midland High when Costello and that crew was there. I never worked with either of those two guys. Knew the names, knew Randy Hutton, knew Frank Marr, right? Knew the aura that came with those two. And I think you just need to go out there and referee. You need to listen. You don't need to run the pregame. You need to sit there and listen, because there is a lot of experience there. I'm the new guy on a lot of my crews. I don't go into the locker room. I just kind of go in, I do my thing. When I get asked a question, I answer it. I'm not saying you can't talk and be loose, but there is a fine line there where you gotta find your little, I don't want to say corner. You gotta find your niche in the mix of that crew. You got the game, so obviously someone believes in you that you can work at that game. So being nervous referee shouldn't be a thing. Might be a little intimidated, which I was. It happens a lot still for me.
Yeah, I think BJ hit it best. Just you're there for a reason. Clearly, your signer feels like you are worthy of that game. You are more than capable of doing that game, just like the other two partners are. You just kind of go out there and you try to do the best that you can, but don't over officiate the game. Just go out there and do it just like you do any other game. And just try to emulate, but also work as a good crew. And sometimes that might not even be just calling, it might be just being good communicators with your two partners. I guarantee you, good communication goes a long way just as a crew.
Would you say that, I mean, like nothing else in that situation where you have an official who's been working with people that they're not as familiar with, and it might be a next level game. Above anything else, just stay in the primary. When you're like, if you do nothing else, officiate the primary.
Work your game, work your 1/3, 2/3, or work the paint if you're elite. Don't go, those guys, if you're on a game with two people, they can handle that game without you being there regardless. So go out there and work wherever you're supposed to be working, and that's it. I agree. I would say that's in your best case scenarios to work the game. Those guys shouldn't let you get eaten up by coaches. You should be able to just run up and down the floor and blow the whistle as you please. I mean, yeah, I think best medicine right there.
At the end of the day, they're still humans too.
Yeah.
There were plenty of times, I remember I had a game with, he works in like the ACC and the Big Ten, and he got straight line, and it was a block charge, and the girl just bulldozed her over, and I was like the patient whistle, and I blew it. He comes up to me and goes, "Thank you. Thank you for making that call," because I didn't see it. So, like, they want you to work the game just like they would want to work the game too. So just as a veteran crew, just stay in your area, call what you have. But if it's a crew saver, don't be afraid to get it.
You said something about communication. So people know the name Gene Steratore, Ed Hightower. Trying to think of some old school Big Ten guys. Were any of those guys great play callers? I mean, for the general, not really. They weren't the best play callers that you would see working a Michigan State game. But guess what? Izzo and Beeline loved those guys because they were communicators. Communication can be almost way more important than play calling. Because if you can confuse a coach, if you can confuse a player, whatever it is. I mean, those guys worked in the Big Ten for years, and they were horrible play callers amongst the ranks in the Big Ten. They really were.
You're ball watching.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So, but they worked out every time you flipped the TV on. Hightower's working at Michigan State, but those guys were communicators, and the coaches respected those people. Okay, I'm not telling you to go out there and blow a travel. That's 100% wrong, but communication is way more important than people realize.
And I think to your point, BJ, another thing too, you talk about the Hightowers and the Steratores. I think one thing about Ed Hightower is every time he stepped in a gym, coaches knew exactly what they were going to get from Ed Hightower. Yeah, the game was probably not going to be officiated from a play calling perspective, but Ed Hightower was consistent. He was consistent in his communication. He was consistent in his play calling, and his crews were consistent. And that's where, you know, from an officiating perspective, and again, I don't mean to steal Jason and BJ's advice or thunder, but, you know, consistent play calling, even if it's not the best play calling in the world, being consistent on one end of the floor as you are on the other end of the floor, I think really speaks to what will create a good relationship with a coach. If they know that, you know, you're the type of official who might let a ticky-tack hand check go, make sure you let it go on both ends of the floor. I mean, am I out of line by saying that?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think, like you guys both touched on it, as far as being able to fuse coaches. We've all been there where both coaches don't know you. There's just places where you're gonna go and you're gonna be the newbie. And they're gonna talk to BJ and they're like, who's that guy? Who's that guy? Because they don't know them. Like you talked about Michigan State or whoever, they're familiar with those officials. It's not a knock on you, they're just not familiar with you. So just go out and do the best you can. But I guarantee you, because I've noticed it, I used to be the, who's that guy? And now it's like, now she's asking or he's asking me, who's your partner? So just like it kind of works itself out. You'll be the new person one time. And then with enough familiarity, then you'll be the person that they're asking, like, hey, who's that guy? Who's that girl? So, and you're just trying to work together as a crew, not throw anybody under the bus. Bruce brought up a good point, like diffusing kind of what the level of voice that you're using with coaches, try to bring them down. And even your body communicates as well. They've talked about, like, a lot of times when you talk with coaches, don't go face to face, stand next to them. That kind of diffuses the situation. If you start face to face, it's kind of like a confrontational body language. So try to kind of turn your body, try to not be in a demonstrative body language that communicates power, authority, if you will.
I do want to just give everyone a heads up. We are going to let Jason go a little bit early. He won't tell anyone this, but he does have a football final coming up 2 weeks or week and a half now. And obviously he's got a Zoom call with his final football crew tonight. So I don't know how much longer you have to stay, Jason, but again, please feel free to ask any questions of either Jason or BJ. Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Besides both of your guys' awesome dads, what would be the top 3 to 5 reasons, characteristics that, you know, where you're at in your officiating career? There's got to be certain things that saw you like just do everything kind of right.
First of all, not the dad.
Yeah.
Don't name drop your dad.
I think the one characteristic that I feel like I try to do is just professionalism. I feel like you don't always have to get the last word with the coaches. You know, you're not gonna say you didn't like that one, you're not gonna like this one. Like sometimes the best thing to say, just don't say anything. Or you're gonna say something, be professional. Coach, I've heard enough. Coach, I'll extend the message or I'll, pass the message on. Stop sign is fine. Sometimes a stop sign is communication. You don't have to say some quick-witted response. A stop sign is plenty. So I feel like just professionalism, not even with coaches, I feel like just professionalism as an official with the crew. I'm not here to big time anybody. We're just out here, all 3 people, whoever they are. We're trying to do the best game that we can, whether it's a high school game, JUCO, whatever. We're just trying to do the best game that we can. But also being good communicators. If you know you're getting paired up with kind of a rookie, try to, kind of protect that person to an extent. You know that person's going to be like the bullseye. You're trying to, you were there one time, and you probably worked with people that kind of protected you to an extent. So just remember that you can always pay it forward with that. But I also feel like I'm not here to throw anybody in the bus. If there was a call in front of BJ, I'll say the coach, it happened right in front of BJ. If you have a question, ask BJ. Because if I explain his call and then he comes back and says, no one, coach, I kicked him. Well, now it makes us both look bad. Because I was defending him and he just kind of said, yeah, that was a shitty call. So you're not trying to cop out, but it's just like, coach, BJ had a good look at it. If you have a question, BJ will be around. 9 times out of 10, coach forgets about it and you move on anyways. But at the same time, if there's a double whistle, then there are times where, coach, I saw the same view because I had the same thing and I called the foul on the same thing. So it depends on the situation. But I think the biggest thing for me is just trying to be professional, whether it's with coaches, players, whatever.
One characteristic I don't like to talk about myself that much, but say being pretty humble. Outside, even at the high school ranks, officiating's a pretty dog-eat-dog world, right? So if you're working Frankenmuth, Bridgeport, if I'm working that game, Tom thinks he should have had that game, right? If I'm working Saginaw Northwood, Jason might think he should have that game. It doesn't get any better the higher you go. As I told you, it took me 4 years to get hired by Bill Eck. And now I take every game and I say, this Saturday I'm working at Madonna, NAIA game. Would I rather be working at Saginaw Valley or somewhere else that pays a little more money? Sure. But guess what? I'm going to Madonna and I'm happy I'm going. So just accepting what games you're given. You can't control what games you guys get. So just being humble, like one of my best friends, officiating outside of officiating, same age as me. He's working in probably 8 Division I leagues this year. 30 years old. Would I like that to be me? Hell yeah. All those checks come with a comma in them. Not the decimal point, a comma. But where I'm at in my life and where he's at in his life, we're like this, right? So just being humble and accepting what you're given and not overreaching because who used to say this? Oh, Jerry Sauter says this. I'd rather be 4 years too late than a year too early. If you know Jerry Sauter's story, he got hired in the Big Ten too young, got canned. It took him a long time to come back. And I've had a very good Division I career. And that's no different at the high school level. If it takes you 4 years to get that Franklin-Bridgeport game, maybe it was meant to take 4 years. So just be humble and accept kind of what you've been given. Like you can't control any of it. To a certain extent, you can control your controllables, but you can't control which buttons Scott and Jason did.
Just control you can control. Assignments have the reasons for giving games. Location could be,
You'll get along with the code.
right, you get along with the coach, you have a problem with that, that game or that coach last year. There's a bunch of factors that go into assigning. And I don't know, my father's an assigner and a college is like, they've got 10 other things that go into assigning games. So just when it comes into getting games, just control what you can control. And if you don't like your schedule, do something. But okay, try to get better. And I would imagine that if you keep going to camp and going to camp to try to get better, not just like checking a box off the list, but actually going to get better, 9 times out of 10, your schedule's probably going to improve.
At the level you guys are working at, how important is video review, game review?
It's unbelievable. I mean, I don't even know. I'm not sure what the word is to describe it. I watch, other than the JUCO, that's hard to get a hold of. It's so invaluable. You guys are talking about looking in the mirror for mechanics. That's great. Watching yourself on film is just 10 times better. We get plays sent to us, ref quest, whatever. If the world knows about something before you can even untie your shoes in the locker room. Game film is just so unbelievably important. In today's world, if you're working that Frankenmuth-Bridgeport game, if you go into the locker room and you don't know the team's records, and you don't know who their best player is, you're doing the game a disservice. Everybody has access to social media and MLive and all these other things. It's important to know who the team's best players are and what you should expect from that game. That wasn't a thing back in the day, but now you should have that knowledge. Game film can help so much for you personally, but even I'll watch game film of a team, not the whole 40 minutes, but a couple clips here and there, or I'll check box scores to see whose team's leading scorers are, if coaches are getting teed up. But all that stuff matters and can factor into your game. So game film is just unworldly important.
It's always funny when you watch game film and sometimes they'll, a lot of officials will throw themselves under the bus. Like a lot of the clips are like people like, hey, this is the play that I kicked. Like they're willing to throw themselves under the bus to help officials learn from that mentality. And sometimes you're like, well, I wouldn't do that. Or whatever the case may be. And then you watch yourself like, literally, I have some work to do. Whether it's, being wider on the baseline or not getting straight line or just being patient whistle. I feel like there's always things that I watch film from and just taking away a couple things. Don't get overwhelmed. You don't want to think oh my gosh, I did such a horrible job. I don't want to go back out to the next game. No, just take a couple things and try to improve. And hopefully the next game, obviously you can take that to your next game. And then hopefully you can focus on something else for the next game after that.
Jason, I'm gonna go on the assumption that you guys are there, what, an hour and a half before the game, is that the requirement?
Yeah, some schools with COVID are requiring an hour and a half. But our signer is an hour and 15 in the locker room.
So you have plenty of time to do a pregame. I'm assuming even at your level, it's a complete pregame, right?
Yeah.
In the RV to have a conversation.
Yeah.
But is there any like, 2 or 3 like really key things that, are above and beyond just sort of routine pregame? You guys, this as a crew, the time.
I think you touched on one in the sense of knowledge of teams.
That's
I feel like
very important.
just going in, be like, okay, what are the coaches like? Do we have like a leading scorer that's just gonna shoot the lights out? On the opposite side, is there a problem child that we kind of have to be cognizant of going into this game, that you better be aware of 32, so he doesn't get or she doesn't get some cheap shot through the game. So I feel like asking people that, especially as the season progresses, hey, you have these 2 teams, how did it go? What kind of offense did they run? You get some teams that, there are some teams that like to just pound it. Especially a big team versus a small team, there's gonna pound it. So now you're gonna have a little bit more post fouls. Or you get a team that has 0 post players, so now you're gonna have guard play, you're gonna have high screens. So now it's like, depending on the game, is depending on kind of what kind of fouls you're probably going to have a more of. Are you gonna have post fouls? You're gonna have screen fouls, you're gonna have ball handling fouls. So I think understanding what the teams are, some of the players, and definitely the coaches, and I'll be honest, even the tables. Like, there were plenty of places, like Superior's shit. Let's be honest, they're a horrible table. And you just know, going up to Lake Superior, that is one more thing that shouldn't be on our plate, but it is. So game clock, shot clock, or whatever the case to be. So just knowing that when you go in a game, what can you control and try to be prepared, players, coaches, table, whatever the case.
Pregame is still there. Our pregame, especially at the Division II level, we don't talk about simple things. When I say simple, at this time we're getting coaches. Our pregame, the knowledge is still there, and the guts of a pregame are still there. It's just in a different version. It's coaches, it's gameplay. We watch film, like we watch clips. Hey, yesterday I was at Saginaw yesterday. Look at this play. What do you guys think about this play? I don't want to say more philosophy based pre-games, but not as rule specific pre-games. I didn't work any high school games last year, but I remember when I was coming up in the high school ranks, and I would print my pregame out on a sheet, and we're going to get captains at this time and at this time, and we're going to make sure we communicate that we have 1-and-1 and little. Those things aren't as prevalent in our pregame, just because it's almost an expectation that stuff goes unsaid, kind of. But we will do some specifics on the game. It's just like I said, knowledge of a pregame and a pregame. It's an hour-long pregame, but it's us talking just in general. It's not a Randy Hutton. We hope he's not watching. Randy Hutton listed pregame, right?
Right, sure.
It's just a little different dynamic.
But I also think that there are plenty of times where you're gonna work with people that you don't know.
Yeah, so you might have to have that.
And I feel
listed
like
pregame.
that pregame and a pregame isn't just the art talk. That's not how my pregame, I want that to go. I'm not just talking. This is an open conversation. This is an open dialogue. By all means, feedback. And if there's other things that you want to add, it's 3 of us. I'm not just standing up here just whistling Dixie out here. It is a crew from a pregame. But I think that just kind of what BJ was saying, you're trying to get on the same page, especially if you haven't worked with somebody. You're just trying to get a feel. So before you get out there, and you got 3 officials calling 3 different games, that's never a good look. So before you go out there, just trying to get on the same page, especially if you're working with somebody that you've never worked with before.
I think it's important in the high school pregame, because unless you're retired, most of us are coming from work. So it's not even, it's just getting out of whatever you had going to the game and getting into a basketball mindset. That's what pregame is really about. To get your mind focused and thinking basketball and not, did I change the laundry over? Did I not do something like that? It's just getting in that basketball mindset. It really is important about pregame.
Go ahead, Marty.
How much you guys talk to players during the game, and if you do, what do you talk about?
I'll talk about anything and everything with a kid to get a relationship going. If it's in the warm-up line, I was at Elma. This kid's been there, I swear to God, for 10 years. Said, what are you, 5th year senior? You know, and then you just get to just conversations, right? And you can have those conversations with any kid here. So if you're at Garber every year for 4 years in a row and a kid was good and he's on varsity, are you playing anywhere next year? Now it's a little different when I gotta tell him to tuck his shirt in 8,000 times, or look, you can't do that. You can't talk to him like that. Like a kid said, and you guys are horrible. And I said, I might be blind, but I'm not deaf. You know, so there can be different levels of conversation. And I think when it's more personable, I think they accept that more. And I think that's different from high school to college with the coach relationship. Very rarely am I saying coach. It's Andy. It was Andy and Kelly last week. Kelly, you got to help me out. Andy, you can't say that, Andy. Like, it's more on of a personal relationship because you build that over time. Because there's a difference between Coach A at high school, who's a PE teacher, but he also coaches basketball, and Coach A at the Division II level, who needs his job to feed his family. You know, so it's just a different dynamic. But I will talk to players about anything and everything, where they go to high school or whatever. I mean, that personal relationship is great, and it can help you in the 4th quarter or the second half when stuff goes to hell.
What about in-game, BJ? Like players camping out in the paint, you know, players hand checking a lot. How much conversation do you, or how much do you try to talk players out of making you blow the whistle unnecessarily?
I would say I talk probably more than I should. I want more fouls than I have to, right? That's more time that I'm there. Am I getting paid for overtime, or am I getting paid if the game takes 4 hours long? But there comes, everybody's gonna have their threshold. Jason's might be shorter than mine, and Bruce's might be longer than mine. As long as the 3 of us are kind of doing the same thing. I mean, but you gotta learn in game, you gotta learn to talk with your whistle in your mouth if you can do that. That's vitally important. I don't know, I have the NCAA wants us to call us everything a foul. I still have a hard time with that.
I always think, like,
You
when
can
I,
cut that out of there.
so you talk about communication, I feel like I make it very clear in my pregame. If I have something to say to a player, I'm trying to help you. Get out of the lane, get your hands off people. I'm trying to help you. If you don't listen to me, obviously now we have consequences for that. So I make it very clear. If I have something to say, or my partners have something to say, we are trying to help you. We're trying to make this game better than what it is. But I think BJ kind of touched on it in the sense that if you have a good core, great. But if you say something in a respectful way, I'll respond in a respectful way. You say something in a disrespectful way, then obviously then there are consequences to that as well. You want to ask me why there was a foul? That's fine. You can't tell me that was a horrible foul. You can't tell me that was a horrible call. You want to ask me? Okay. During a free throw, I'll explain it to you, or whatever the case may be. But this is kind of one of those professional things where if you ask something, coach or player, in a respectful tone or in a respectful way, then I'll give you a response. But you have to, but it works both ways. You can't be an a-hole and then expect me to be this nice guy.
Other questions? Questions for Jason Andrezjewski?
So for the signer standpoint, I do hockey and basketball at the same time.
Okay.
So I kind of just do who assigns me first.
Yep.
And then lock out for the other sport.
different systems.
Is that the best way to do it?
Yeah, that's the best way to keep that updated. Once you accept the hockey, block it out on the arbiter, I don't know what the program they use. Yeah, and vice versa, so then, and yeah, that's probably the best way. So we try to get it out as efficiently as we can, but things constantly change as we experience today. Scott calling it 12 times. Games being added for the weekend tournament that nobody told us about and stuff like that. So, so there's constantly changing, and even once schedules are out, once we'd say, hey, we're all signed. That's just the start of it. As Bill would know, there's a constant changing, and if you're ever available, say, oh gosh, hockey this week got canceled because of whatever. Hey, these days opened up. Email, hey, I'm available Tuesdays and Thursday this week, where normally I wasn't. Something comes up, let me know. And then they'll put you kind of on a list of, hey, okay, BJ just called and canceled. He had something with his foot. Hey, can you fill in here? Things like that. So it's, what's your name? What's your name?
I'm Rico.
Rico. Okay, I know. Yeah, without a hat on.
BJ, I have one more question for you. I've heard you use the language explaining to your coach, A to B, right? Can you tell me, that seemed like a great, I never shout.
What's that? Oh, dang.
You're A to B. Like the next, like.
So that's like verticality, so not even verticality. Any player on the floor can go from right here to the ceiling. A to A. They have their space on the floor, right? You can't go from A to B or A to E anywhere else. So, like an offense initiated contact type of play. Think of how to word that. Let's start with, don't penalize people that don't do anything wrong. If A goes into B and we hang a foul on B that did nothing wrong, how do you think Coach B is going to feel about that? Hang the foul on A if he deserves it, or let it go. Offensive initiated contact, everything in the high school game trickles from the college, which trickles from the NBA game, and it's horrible. You watch NBA basketball. So I'm not sure. I'm kind of really going in a circle here, Bruce.
We talk about defense.
I think the A to B one is really the point. Is from college level, high school. You still officiate the defense. Is that like in your back of your mind? You're like, you have a play. Your voice in your head is going, find the defender.
Find the defender and make sure that they do something wrong. We're notorious for hanging fouls on defenders that do absolutely nothing wrong. We get videos every week of offensive initiated plays, contact plays where we hang a foul on the defense. This is recorded, I should.
I have editing software.
Okay, so if the ball's out front, I'm not worried about the ball. If there's no pressure on the ball, if there's not a defender up in the ball handler's face, the ball's not going anywhere. You worry about the defender, you worry about the screen that's coming, you worry about the other couple guys the ball's not going anywhere. It's more likely going to end up in your lap or it's going to go somewhere else. Officiating the defender is just so vitally important. Knowing if they have legal guarding position, knowing if they're in their own space and they're going from A to A and not A into B. Officiating defender, that's one of the things that has carried on through the years of officiating. They've gotten stuff out like rhythm, speed, balance, and quickness, which I think is still vitally important. What was the other one that was always big?
So we're using right now, we're saying, did they obtain legal guarding position? Did they maintain legal guarding position? That's the big thing for us this year, that's the words that we want to use. Did they obtain it? Did they maintain it? Because if so, And you shouldn't be calling a foul on the defense unless they're, whacking or whatever the case would be. But as far as body movement, sliding, did they retain legal guarding position? Do they maintain legal guarding position? So, and you should have a foul on the defense.
If you're saying those words as coaches, back to Monday, you gotta know what those words mean. So by rule, legal guarding position is X, Y, Z. You gotta be able to rattle that stuff off, because if you're gonna claim that as your case of why you did or didn't call a foul, you gotta be able to explain yourself. So
One thing I'll say, we brought up Dan Shell at Mount Pleasant, right? One of the things that what's that?
did he really?
Yeah,
I heard he was still coaching.
Oh.
His kid is gone.
one of the things that I always admired, one of the things that I always admired about BJ and I probably worked 3 boys games together at Mount Pleasant. And BJ would tell us before the game, I'm just letting you know, Dan hates me. Right? And he was humble enough to say, Dan hates me. And understand that's probably not going to change. Why? I'm not really sure, because BJ could easily officiate the best high school game in the state of Michigan and be the best official on the floor. But for some reason, Dan just didn't care for BJ, but he was humble enough to admit it. Number one,
You got the names mixed up.
it must have been, yeah. It was a legacy issue. Is that what it was? It was a Weaver legacy issue, but he gave us that information.
Are you leaving now? No, I'm from exposure now.
He gave us that information ahead of time. Every single time that we had a pregame for a Mount Pleasant boys varsity game, BJ would always let us know, Dan does not like me, but it never once affected how he officiated that game. He always communicated to Dan the exact same way, even though he knew Dan had some type of complex about him. He always officiated the game the same way, and he always communicated to Dan the same way. And yeah, it was readily apparent that Dan did not care for BJ Weaver, right? But sometimes that happens. We just have to deal with it. Not every coach is going to like you, but that shouldn't impact how you are officiating the game, how you're communicating with that coach. And my personal belief is that is probably one of the most important messages that you can bring forward to your crew before the game. If you know a coach just has it in for you, communicate that to your crew before the game, because that will put everyone in the right mindset. Am I off base?
That's just because Dan doesn't appreciate good fishing.
and it's right, exactly.
Going back to what I said about Brian. Brian's a great dad. He knows that. I love him. I know him for all his life. And the reason for that is to find examples right there.
Right.
BJ is a class act. BJ, you've been a class act since the day I know you. That's why you are where you are right now. And if you continue to do what you're doing, you're going to make it to where you want to make it. We all know that. Those who know you are very proud of you. So is your dad.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that.
Are you happy where you're at? Or you still wanna go farther? You guys wanna go farther, or you have to where you're at right now?
Currently, I'm happy where I'm at. I'm pretty realistic. Some factoring determiners, some obvious ones. Family, my current job. I might be a lifer GLIAC guy. I'm perfectly okay with that. If I can get a chance here in the next couple of years the problem with camps nowadays is if you go to camp and I commit to camp at the Division I level now, I'm going until I get hired, or I'm just going to end up stop going. And that could be 6 years in a row. I got to commit the time and the money to go to camp. And where my kids are at, and that might not fall in. So do I have ambitions? Yeah. Am I realistic to think that this might be it? Yeah, but there's more to where I'm at now. I worked the GLIAC tournament once by accident. But there's more endeavors in where I'm at now. So if I don't go to the next level, that's fine. But I'm happy where I'm at. Very happy.
I would say, I don't have there's a lot of D1 officials that have more flexible jobs, I guess would be the best way to describe it. Salesmen, they can be on the road all day long. Obviously, as a teacher, don't have that luxury. So I have to be realistic as far as what I am capable of doing. I can't take a week off from school. Just not possible. So I understand that might limit my games, but at the same time, my ambition would be to carve out whatever career that I can as far as the D1 level. So whatever I'm getting now, I'd love to get one more game than I got from the year before. But I also know, like, my assigner, she's got the Big Ten, she's got the MAC, she's got Horizon, she's got 7 Division I conferences all across America. So I know that she's my go-to. She's the beginning, she's the end. There's nobody else that I feel like I could probably go to at that point in time. So I know that me going to her camp, there's nobody else camp to really go to because nothing else would benefit me. Obviously, I'm not going down to Tennessee or Florida or anything like that. So I think I have to be realistic as far as traveling, what I can do, because I'm not in a position that I can make that full time. I'm not doing the 40, 50 Division I games with a common paycheck that you can make it a livelihood and you can crank out that much money in 4 or 5 months. I have to be realistic. That's not my primary occupation. And I can't get fired for my primary occupation as well. So I think you have to just have realistic goals. But there's nothing wrong with being ambitious. But I think they have to be realistic. And I think you just have to, if you strive for what your goals are.
Well, we've reached 7:30. Oh, go ahead, Tom. Yeah, last question. Yep.
I know we're short on time, so, and I know we as officials here in the room, there's probably been a time or two where during the course of the game, or conversation with the coach, we might have not been the most professional, so to speak, maybe even go as far as saying perhaps we've lost it. So I guess twofold question for you both if you choose to answer. One is has there been a time in your collegiate career where you maybe just like said something you shouldn't have, or got into a situation where you maybe reacted wrong? And if so, after that, what did you learn from it to get better from that?
I don't think that for me, it was never something where I said something wrong. It was kind of me allowing the coach to have too long of a leash. So I'm going to take the backside of that question in the sense of I should have stopped him earlier, or at least from an assistant coach, stopped them earlier. And that was kind of earlier in my career, just like I was the newbie and probably just didn't have the kahunas to kind of put that coach kind of in a stop. So I don't feel like as I look back, it wasn't anything that I've ever said to a coach. It was just like, I wish I would have handled that situation differently, because I feel like I didn't help my crew out because the coach kind of was starting to chirp at everybody. It was kind of like, and I was the R, and that was early on. I should have stopped it early. That was my fault, and I should have stopped it earlier. And so that's just something that I feel like I take away of how did I handle coaches? Could I have improved how I handled the coaches? Whether it was diffusing, as Bruce said, or are they across the line? And there has to be some consequences for that. And you're just not willing to pull the trigger on that.
Tom, you can edit this part out too.
It's not.
I was gonna say I gotta write down these timestamps here.
There's some more, especially when you get to Division II level. I've said some stuff to coaches that you definitely do not need to say to high school coaches, and I would never condone some stuff that I've said to some other coaches. And it's just a different understanding at that level. The F word is very prevalent at that level. But I had to have a conversation with a coach once, and I said, I won't say his name. I said, if you want to mother F me, you can do it right here to me and not across the floor. There's just different leashes at that level. You can't, you're not going into Garber Gym and saying that to Chris. So it's more of understanding your coaches. And like, I'm not out there doing that every game. And that's why I said, maybe I wouldn't have said that. But the dynamic is so different at the next level. It really is, to where you have to have some of those conversations sometimes. And now that coach ate me alive to start. Since that exact moment, we've been PG Keen. So I don't know if he thinks that now he can say whatever he needs to say to me, get it off his chest. I don't know. I'm not gonna question it because things are going okay. Sometimes you get so caught up in the moment. Those games are mentally draining. They really are. I mean, you're working so hard to see plays and work with coaches and make sure stuff's going right, communicatively and administratively. Those games are just so emotionally draining. I had a game last Friday, and we worked our butts off, and worked your butt off, had an awesome game, and now you get a 2-hour ride car home, right? So, I mean, yeah, there's definitely stuff I've said that I would take back. I'm not really fond of, but sometimes you just get so caught up in the moment. But now you sit back and go, oh man, I probably should have said that.
I think there are things that are probably said in that sideline, not said.
Yeah, things are different. I think they are. If you ever get a chance to sit on the sideline in like at Saginaw Valley football game, oh my God, just the stuff you hear there is unreal. It's just socially acceptable in that venue and at that time. I'm not saying it's worldly acceptable or acceptable in any other environment. It's just nature at that level.
I think we owe these three gentlemen a round of applause.
Thank you again, everyone. Obviously, tonight was the last in-person training meeting. Hopefully, the video from Monday night is uploaded to YouTube by now. I was doing it while we were doing this, and I'll try to get this one uploaded as quickly as possible. Okay. Bill, do you want to tell everyone what you got going on up
I
here?
got a bunch of shirts and some pants, shirts are $5, everybody needs them. Some shoes, wait, I got the sizes broken down, the shirts are all large.
Don't forget to sign Bill's basketball on your way out.
Sam, can you come and see me real quick? Thank you.